It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by Mastercard Foundation and CC Hub.
Welcome to EdTech Mondays Nigeria, a platform that facilitates critical conversations on the use of technology for teaching and learning. I am Chinyelu Apa, your host on the show, and it's good to be back here again. Over the last 3 episodes, we have explored the critical need for public-private partnerships in scaling EdTech and fostering inclusive innovation. We have examined the contributions of governments, private sector players, and the civil society. And as we wrap up this 4-part series, we focus on the role that these EdTech companies themselves play in the public-private partnership to boost EdTech adoption in Nigeria. This final episode explores how public-private partnerships have benefited the EdTech service providers, helping them grow, improve service delivery, and navigate real-world implementation challenges. We also reflect on how success is defined and measured in EdTech partnerships. On the episode today, I am joined by a quintessential EdTech solution provider, Ojugo Uche. Ojugo is the co-founder and CEO of Genti Media, an audio platform and marketplace showcasing African audio content stories, dramas, books, courses, and more in African voices and languages through the Genti audio app and creator portal. Genti is a 2024 Mastercard Foundation EdTech Fellow. Prior to founding Genti, Ojugo spent much of her professional career as a management consultant solving problems for African companies. She's passionate about the intersection of language, culture, education, and expression. Join me as I welcome this phenomenal EdTech founder, Ojugo Uche. Hello, Ojugo. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Chinyelu. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you. I'm so excited because your solution is doing something that is not the regular kind of EdTech we are used to or that we would find in Nigeria. So before we get into, asking our regular question, what is Genti, right?
Correct.
Genti. So what is Genti? Genti Media, and what do you do when it comes to education and EdTech?
Thank you for that question. As you visibly pronounced it, Genti comes from the Igbo word to listen. And that is about listening to, as you also have said so beautifully in the intro, to stories, to dramas, to audiobooks, to courses, right? In African voices, in our languages, right? We have over 10,000 hours of content in 22 languages. And when we think about education, is education really widely defined? When we look at our history, right, on the African continent, so much learning, right, happens under the quintessential sort of moonlight, right? And so storytelling really as a way to impart cultural education, so impart also thematic-based learning as well, has always been a thing, right? And so for us, it has always been a thing. And in audio form as well, with radio has wide adoption in Nigeria. And so for us, in the age of the smartphone, right, where you don't have to wait to be in a particular place and tuned into a station at a particular time, what Genti allows us to do is to continue to champion that power, right, of storytelling, that power of audio, right, in education, in cultural education, in moral education, from your pocket and from your smartphone.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what type of listeners, subscribers would you typically get? Does it have any age restrictions?
So no, it doesn't have age restrictions, but we notice that a majority of our users, about 60%, are between the ages of 18 and 35. So it's definitely a young market. That being said, we also have quite a bit of usership from the older folks as well, from a point of view of nostalgia, because of some of our content also acquiring content. We don't only create content ourselves, right? So we've created audio courses, audio stories, documentaries, right, about the economy, about politics. But we also collate and curate and host third-party content. And for those that are radio based initially, radio archives, that has brought in also an older crowd because of nostalgia.
That's very impressive. They have over 10,000 hours.
Precisely. Wow.
So now with all of this, Genty couldn't have done this on their own, getting, these 10,000 hours to I want to believe the thousands of people who are subscribed, to the Genti, media platform. So how has Genti Media benefited from public-private partnerships to extend its impact? And I ask this because when you think EdTech, most times people are thinking solutions that can help them solve maths, pass exams, LMS solution. Nobody is thinking about this bit, this niche area that Genty is playing in.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that it's a typical type of partnership you get into, and you do a lot of work in trying to drive home the importance of what you do and what Genty can service. So back to it, how have you benefited from public-private partnerships to drive impacts as an organization?
So as I answer that, something you said in situating Genty, I want to highlight because, that stood out to me at the Mastercard Foundation EdTech Festival last year, where, really on the stage, a representative of the World Bank mentioned, you also need platforms where people can collate and bring together different content. And that's why for us, we are a platform, we are a marketplace. So we're bringing, right, the creators, right, the owners of the content. So what that means is that you can have, right, that math content, right, in partnership with an NGO in Borno, in Hausa and English, as well as, right, cultural education content from, Radio Nigeria sitting on our platform. And that dovetails very nicely into answering your question, which is that partnership. For us, a big part of that has been around content partnership. You have a lot of amazing content that has been created, right? Where learning science has gone into it, thinking has gone into it, research has gone into it, hundreds and hundreds of hours of content, but sitting in archives. And what such opportunity was with FRCN, Federal Radio.
When you said that, what flashed in my head was actually FRCN.
Exactly.
Because I passed by at Obalindel, I'm looking at that piece, like, I can imagine how much content these guys have up there.
Precisely. And they were one of the first sort of key partners that we had, right? And so in sitting down with them, gaining the ears of, director of programs, the deputy director of programs, we're able to get archives into the Genti platform. So what does that do? What that does is that is the partnership right there, right? Getting content that already has been produced, bringing it to new and renewed audiences and allowing them to, make something out of it and to see who is listening, right, with the power of analytics. So that's an example. And then also even bringing together as Genty, bringing together, right, an FRC and bringing together a Radio Nigeria and also other, right, public and private partners. So last year, Genty hosted and curated of Tongues and Voices. It was an exhibition for audio storytelling and, Nigerian languages, right? A first of its kind, really, an audiovisual exhibition. And it wasn't just, an exhibition, it was also a 1.5 months of workshops. And one of the workshops that was so well attended and enjoyed was one where we were bringing together in the panel people from FRCN, but also from other partners who are more in the development space, one such one being ARDA DCI, who have hundreds and hundreds of hours of content as well that is educating, right, on health, educating on sex education that has been in archives, right? We're bringing them together with people from Correct FM and talking about what is the power of storytelling in this our oral environment to continue to educate, right, across culture. Those are examples of those partnerships. It's around gaining content, right, through those partnerships and conversations, and then bringing people together.
And this is really impressive because I'm thinking, imagine the amount of content that would lie in the archives of an FRC and around government and how you can help young people who are even in secondary schools to understand the stories around, what Nigeria is and help them make sense of things around the legislature, judiciary, and other very, I would say, not interesting thing that they'll typically see in their textbooks, but through the power of storytelling, hearing different, most times animated voices, help them connect and learn. In principle, this is very impressive. Well done on the job that's
There's more to share, but I guess you have people have to check it out and
check it out by themselves. So now, what common challenges do EdTech startups face when engaging with government and corporate partners? I know that you have stories to tell, but what are some of the common challenges?
So I think I'll highlight two
Okay.
here. So the first one is red tape, right? So
Red tape.
yes,
Okay.
the bureaucracy, and that's just the time it takes to gain, to enter in, to get heard, the processes as well. There are other sort of government and peri-government agencies that we are also chasing and trying to partner with, that have stories on numeracy and other things, but we've not yet cracked. So that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges around, like, the time it takes sometimes can be underestimated. But I mean, for any edtech founder, for any founder really, and any entrepreneur, that just speaks to the power of doggedness to continue to follow up and to continue to find ways to to penetrate, to get warm introductions and so forth, because partnerships are important. So that's the first one. Then secondly, very quickly, I would say is for us as edtech, for us in Genty particularly, the thing is that Genty is an app, right? Genti Audio is an app on the smartphone. And what that means is that there are certain limitations from an accessibility standpoint, right? So if you have someone in a very rural part of the country that has limited connectivity, they might not be able to fully utilize that. Now, of course, there are people that are in peri-urban areas and areas where, that they still can be reached. But what this does is that for government partners, a lot of time accessibility is super important. Yes. Right? And so there can be a tension there. But in our conversations, we see that when we, identify that, yes, we may have limitations, but there are groups of people that still can be reached, number one. And then the power of data and analytics, when we do reach them, to tell you exactly who is listening, where they're listening from, how
their interests. So you know
interest.
what to continue to provide to them.
Precisely. But that is an area of tension, right? Because of like slightly different areas of focus. But we're still able to collaborate nevertheless.
Yeah, because when you think about it, and this bit around, who is using it and it's being, an app, one solution cannot effectively, answer everybody, provide the service to everybody. So it's really you being able to think of the niche group who would not typically listen to the radio or maybe have opportunities to sit in the same room with the people who are leading this conversation and, where this content is being originally created, and push the audio, push the stories, push the lessons to them where they are. And through that process, learning is happening. And to our final question, Odrigo, what forms of support are most critical for startups to scale and sustain partnerships in edtech? I know you've said one, doggedness, because you have to keep going back. You know what you want. So regardless of how much time it's going to take you, you know what the end goal is. So you have to keep going back to visit and revisit the conversations and connections. But what other forms of support now are most critical for, edtech startups who want to get into partnerships?
So for government partnerships, I think access to decision makers is also a support that is, very much needed. And I mean, it behooves me to mention, right, as the Mastercard Foundation CC Hub EdTech Fellow, that is an area that, this fellowship has really given a lot to me, right, with the EdTech Festival last year. But however, I know that there's a wide range of people listening right now. And the great thing is that CC Hub as a community is very open and accessible, right? And even before I was, an EdTech Fellow, there were people that were maybe a cold LinkedIn message away. So just something to also think about. If you can't access the people, the decision makers directly, who can you go through? What communities exist? What open houses are happening at CC Hub, at other such spaces, so that you can get in touch. But I think that's the biggest one, because warm introductions and warm follow-ups have been critical in sort of, cutting that red tape, at least to an extent.
So the biggest bit of support really for any EdTech organization is just access to the people who call the shots, who make the big decisions around EdTech adoption.
Yes.
At the end of the day. Thank you so much, Ojugo. I promise I could keep listening to you. And do you have any of your own personal stories up that you have voiced on Genti Media?
Yes, on Genty, we also have I guess I love this name, of Tones and Voices, which is a podcast which also explores everything from our stories and also conversations with key sort of people that we've partnered with in the past.
So where can people, because I would really want people to now give feedback, because what we do on the EdTech Mondays Nigeria show is, facilitating critical conversation on the use of technology for teaching and learning, and really helping Nigerians see what EdTech is. So when we've talked about EdTech for the many months and days that we have been on this show, I can still bet that most people would never think of a Genti Media as an EdTech solution. So where can people check out the Genti Media app to see what you do and see how the power of voices and storytelling can push the needle on education, wrapping it up in that beautiful package in Nigeria?
So you can do that on the, Play Store or the App Store, and it's
Google Play Store.
The Google Play Store, App Store. You can download it and start listening for free and check out what we have across board. So thank you.
Great. To you, our listeners, would love to hear from you. What other forms of support do you think EdTech founders like Ojugo would need to have the best form of partnerships for their solutions that would drive impacts, and get learners, get people everywhere on board the EdTech train? What type of partnerships, what type of support would they need? Do they need to get their solutions on board a larger, group of people? Would love to hear from you. Send us an SMS or a WhatsApp message via this number 0703 165 0809 or 0706 402 0742. We would love to hear from you. And in case you have any other feedback you'd like to give us from the conversations this month, PPPs for EdTech adoption in Nigeria, public-private partnerships pushing EdTech adoption, EdTech growth in Nigeria, shoot us a message, a WhatsApp message. We'd like to hear from you. And in case you know anyone who missed either this episode, this very engaging episode with Ojugo, or with any of our other guests on the show this month, quickly push them on, direct them to Spotify, EdTech Mondays Nigeria, or they can watch on YouTube at CC Hub Africa. Search for EdTech Mondays Nigeria. Watch, drop your comments, and join the conversation. Remember, we had a very, very active community, where we discuss in more detail, in more depth, the conversations from all our Monday engagements. So please do well to join us on WhatsApp or on Telegram. EdTech Mondays Nigeria. Ojugo mentioned something very important, saying if you're a founder, you might not know the person, but you can join communities that can grant you access to the people that you need to speak to. And I assure you that these communities have these people who can grant you access to the conversations you need to have. So join the communities, EdTech Mondays Nigeria on Telegram and on WhatsApp. And until I come your way, same time next week, Ojugo, it was so good having you here.
It was such a pleasure.
I remain your host, Chinyelu Apa. Keep using technology to push the boundaries and the frontiers on education. It's bye for now.
It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by Mastercard Foundation and CC Hub.